Your father's corpse isn't even cold and you think you can just waltz into my lake community. That was the very first thing Cordelia Blackthorne ever said to me. And if that doesn't make you want to lock your doors, I don't know what does. Picture this. I had barely set foot in my so-called inheritance, my late father's lake house, before Cordelia marched into my kitchen, flanked by two goons with bulges under their jackets that screamed Glock 19s. Meanwhile, 3 sheriff's deputies stood outside, waiting to arrest me for trespassing on my own property. The air reeked of her perfume, thick enough to choke a horse, layered with diesel fumes from the moving truck, still idling out front. And somewhere above it all, a Coast Guard chopper circled the lake she'd called them to, claiming I was running a human trafficking ring. Now, if you're thinking, this has to be a joke, you're not alone. 37 minutes after I set foot inside, I was already living in a fever dream where nothing made sense and everyone was armed. But let me tell you, the irony in Cordelia's accusation would become crystal clear exactly 72 hours later when FBI agents kicked down her door at 3 in the morning. But right then, all I could do was stand in the middle of my father's kitchen surrounded by boxes I hadn't unpacked, listening to this woman threaten to put me in the ground right next to my dad if I didn't sign the property over to the HOA. She had this way of talking real casual, like she was discussing the weather and not straight-up murder. But Cordelia didn't know that every single word out of her mouth was being recorded. My father's old surveillance system was blinking away in the corner, streaming everything to a federal server. She also didn't know my dad, Harrison Whitlock, owned 51% of her precious HOA. And those packages she moved through my inherited dock. Yeah, not drugs, actual people. Human beings sold like cargo. Let me back up a second, because I know you're probably thinking, how does inheriting a house turn into a shootout with the HOA president in under an hour? The answer is, well, you got to hear the whole thing. My name's Jasper Whitlock, 35, Marine vet, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and I owned that house for exactly 40 minutes before Cordelia tried to bury me. See, I hadn't spoken to my old man in 10 years, not since Mom's funeral, when I'd said things you can't take back. Called him a coward for not fighting harder, told him I never wanted to see him again. He respected that wish until the day he died cancer 6 weeks ago. Then out of nowhere, I get a call from his lawyer. You inherited everything, including something your father died protecting. That was all he said. I drove in with a moving truck, the lake air mixing with the pine, the sun beating down like it wanted a fight. The house was straight out of a time capsule, everything smelling like Cuban cigars, and underneath it all, fear. And then there were the boot prints, fresh military tread leading straight to the basement. Someone had been here before me. Someone who knew my dad was dead before the rest of the world. The whole time I felt like I was being watched. Saw a neighbor across the way with military binoculars, not your average nosy neighbor. I carried in exactly 1 box Mom's photos. That's when it all started. 3 cars screeched up gravel spraying, and out stepped Cordelia, pink blazer pearls, and that permanent dead-eyed smile. Her men moved like they were ex-military hands hovering near their weapons. "You're trespassing," she announced, not a hint of doubt, like the law didn't even apply to her. I handed her every document I had, deed, will, my ID. She didn't even glance. "Your father stole this property from our community. You have 5 minutes to leave before I call the police." I almost laughed, but the look in her eyes stopped me cold. This wasn't a bluff. She really thought she owned everything and everyone here. 4 minutes later, she dialed 911, loud enough for me to hear every word. "Armed intruder, military trained, extremely dangerous, send SWAT." I was standing on my own porch holding my mom's photos, but just like that, I'd become the villain in her story. The sirens came fast, too fast for a little town like this. Morrison, a young deputy, stepped out, hand already on his gun, but his eyes darted to Cordelia first. That was when I knew she owned the whole show. Morrison's voice was shaking, not from adrenaline, but from fear. He cuffed me tight, whispering, "She owns everyone here. Just go along for now." Meanwhile, Cordelia ordered them to search my house. No warrant, no hesitation. Morrison tried to protest, but Cordelia shut him down with a single threat: his sister's medical bills paid by the HOA. Leverage everywhere. They ransacked my house, tearing up boxes, even ripping up floorboards. Finally, one of the deputies found a rusted lockbox hidden in the basement, a box Cordelia wanted desperately, though she pretended otherwise. Morrison, cornered by Cordelia's threats, took it straight to his cruiser, mouthing sorry as he passed. 4 hours in county lockup and the charges kept changing. Trespassing became breaking and entering, then terrorism because of my military background. My one phone call went to Captain Rebecca Stone, my old JAG buddy from Afghanistan. If anyone could handle this, it was her. She showed up like a hurricane, tore their probable cause to shreds, and got me out. But not before Cordelia had done her damage. I came home to a house that looked like a tornado had hit it, but it was the basement that mattered. My father's office, really a command center, was still running surveillance monitors, an evidence wall covered in photos, documents, strings, everything pointing to Cordelia, boats unloading people at 3 a.m., license plates from 7 states, Cordelia's sons directing it all. And then my father's leather journal, his last entry, just weeks before he died. Cordelia running human trafficking through HOA docks. If I die, it's murder. Jasper finished this. If you've ever misjudged someone you loved, you know what that moment feels like. My hands shook reading it. The man I'd hated for a decade had been dying slowly, letting Cordelia poison him so he could gather evidence. I broke down right there, guilt drowning me. The phone on his desk rang. It was Agent Rivera with ICE. Your father told me you'd answer. Cordelia's getting desperate. She doesn't know how much evidence we have. That lockbox was a decoy. 17 more are hidden. Rivera needed a confession. He needed me alive for 72 more hours. That night, Elizabeth Wong, my neighbor, knocked at my door. She pressed a casserole into my hands underneath a note. Your father saved my daughter. Now I'll save his son. Trust no one else. She explained everything. At her house, her daughter had witnessed Cordelia's operation been threatened, but my father bought the HOA to protect her. 12 families in the community knew the truth, but were too scared to speak. Back at my place, Cordelia escalated bogus fines for grass health department harassment, fire marshal inspections. Each visit, I got a text, give up. Instead, I documented everything, determined to fight back. That night, I watched as 3 boats slipped across the lake, no running lights. Through my cameras, I saw people, mostly children, herded off the boats loaded into vans by Cordelia's sons. Deputy Morrison found me watching, torn apart by guilt. His sister's cancer had forced him to look the other way, but I told him straight, you pick a side tomorrow night at the HOA meeting. Choose wrong and you'll do time. Choose right and maybe you just lose your badge. The next morning, I hit First National Bank, retrieve box 7891. Inside, hundreds of photographs, bank records, a USB labeled insurance. Footage of Cordelia poisoning my father, meeting with cartel members, discussing murders as if she was ordering takeout. That night, the HOA meeting was packed, out-of-state cars everywhere, Cordelia's private army on high alert. But federal agents had already infiltrated. Cordelia tried to have me declared insane, waving psychiatric files I'd never seen. I played her own words through my speaker, her voice filling the room with talk of bodies in the lake. She accused me of deep fakes, but the documents, the journal, and finally the USB drive painted the truth. In her panic, Cordelia stood and confessed right there, admitting the whole operation, the money, the murders, the trafficking, everything. That was Rivera's cue. Agents stormed in, arrested Cordelia, her sons, the complicit board members, and cartel muscle. Morrison put down his gun and gave up without a fight. As Cordelia was dragged away, she spat venom. Your father died alone and afraid. I told her my father died a hero. You'll die in a cage. The news blew up. HOA president ran the Midwest's biggest trafficking ring. My father's files saved hundreds, maybe thousands. In the aftermath, Cordelia and her sons got life. The complicit lost everything. Morrison testified. and got 3 years. The community renamed the lake for my father. Victims started new lives, some opening businesses. One girl painted a mural of my dad as a guardian angel. Rebecca stayed. We married on the same dock Cordelia once threatened me. We fostered a boy whose parents were lost to trafficking. Every sunrise over that water reminds me this is what justice looks like. So if you've ever doubted what one person can do or wondered if fighting back matters, remember my father. The greatest battles aren't won with weapons, but with people who refuse to let evil have the last word. What would you do if you uncovered a crime like this in your own backyard? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about justice, courage, and what it really means to protect a community. And hey, if you ever find yourself facing down your own Cordelia, don't back down. You might just save the world.